You're going live. You can talk.
Hello. Welcome everybody. Nick's going to be joining me shortly. This is Jill from Hipstrings, and this is the kickoff video for the Great Mashup Spin-Along. And so this is mostly about how to use your stash, or how to combine fiber that, you know, it isn't the same dye lot, it's not the same blend, into larger spinning projects. So this is kind of walking you through my process that I do for my own spinning projects. I very rarely spin 4-ounce projects. I usually spin larger projects, and I usually am combining fibers when I spin. So,
Behind me. Just a little bit hard to get back here.
So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to kind of talk about my thoughts as far as they pertain to fiber selection for large projects, and what characteristics to look in fiber when you're choosing fiber for a particular project. I'm going to talk about the fiber that I'm going to use for this mashup spin-along. And then once I've kind of finished lecturing you guys can ask me questions, and we'll do a little Q&A session. So I usually am joining fibers together for a larger project like sweaters. Like the sweater I'm wearing is not actually one I spun a knit, but it's somebody, a friend bought the fiber from me, spun it up, and then she didn't like it, but it fit me perfectly, so I traded her yarn for the sweater. But this is a mashup of two of my signature blends. It's a mashup of turquoise and space unicorn, both spun separately as singles and then put together in plying for a marled yarn. And so that's kind of an idea of how this works. So talking about fiber selection, it really starts when you're thinking about what you want to make from the yarn that you're going to create. The yarn that you want to make for like a sweater is going to have different characteristics than something for a large shawl. And so you can start to take into account fiber characteristics when planning those projects.
So what are some, shawl versus sweater? That's a pretty big range there, right? So what are, I know you're going to go into detail, but give us some idea of what are the sort of things we need to think about.
For a sweater, you want something that's going to take a little bit of wear. You don't want something that's going to pill. You don't want a fiber that's going to grow on you. You want something that's going to stay, about what you knitted at is what the size of that garment's going to end up being even after a day of wear. Whereas a shawl, you want something that's a little bit, has more drape. It's going to hug you. You're going to be able to wrap it around yourself.
It doesn't matter so much if it grows over the day.
Right. Or you might want something that holds a block. Yeah. If you're going to create something that involves lace.
Okay.
So one of the benefits of what I do is every single fiber blend that I create, I spin at least an ounce sample of it. So what I have on the table in front of me is actually just mostly discontinued blends, as well as a couple of the current blends. I think by now I've created hundreds of custom blends of fibers over the past 7 years.
So there are two very good reasons why you are showing off mostly discontinued blends. One I can certainly think of is the fact that this may be stuff that you guys have leftovers back at...
You might have in your stash.
Back in your stash that, because they're discontinued, you can't get any more, right?
Right. And this is definitely a great project for doing stash diving. So, and this does, what I'm talking about with, my signature blends, the same info goes towards, dyed comb top. You can use kind of the same things. The color is going to be different, and color mixing is different, and that we're going to talk about next time.
When's next time?
On Tuesday at 9 p.m.
Okay.
We're going to talk about color theory when putting together stuff, but today we're just going to talk about fiber. So the easiest thing I like to say is you can tell a lot about a yarn or even a fiber, how it's going to behave by looking at in a skein. And that is, if you have a skein, these are mostly all the same skein size. But like this, compared to this skein, which can't hold itself up, this is Astrolight. It's superfine merino and silk. This is Won't You Be My Neighbor, which is BFL and Shetland. It's got a little bit of drape, like it goes over to a little bit side.
Versus
because
this one?
Whereas like that one, or let's grab a Rambouillet, something that has a bunch of where's Unicorn Library? Oh. This one.
Just go straight up.
It goes straight up. So, how upright your skein is when you hold it is a good predictor of kind of, is this a yarn that's going to hold itself up in a garment?
Or is it going to drape?
Or is it going to drape? Is it just going to fall over? So I kind of have these in piles of drapey. So these are mostly like superfine merino mixed with viscose or silk.
Looks like a flower bouquet.
That's very droopy. This is all merino silks or merino viscoses. So they have a little bit. They'll still work. Those are all merino tussa, or those are all wool tussa and flax blends. So those have a little bit of drape. These are all BFL blends.
And how's the drape on those?
Drapey. BFL is a long wool, and part of the thing with long wools is that they don't have a tight crimp, and so they tend to be very drapey. The grist is usually pretty strong on those too. These are like medium wools. This is like Shetland and Corriedale, Manxloten, and things like that. And so these are, they're not a soft skin, but these would be all great outerwear.
Drapey or no? We're talking about drape, right?
Yeah.
Drapey?
They're going to hold up. These
drapey, but hold up. Won't stretch.
Right. They're not going to stretch.
Okay, and I'll help you out.
And that's poofy. That's Polworth and Rambouillet and all sorts of that kind of stuff. So that's poof.
Drape level?
No drape.
No drape.
It's going to hold itself up.
So these are all 1 ounce samples that you spun up.
Yes.
Obviously, when somebody's picking fiber from their stash,
so
they're
what
not
if you're
going
just
to have 1 ounce samples.
Right.
When
So
they're
if you're just
around,
looking,
right?
Well, the same thing goes. These are all braids, and some hold up
differently.
Differently.
Now, some of that is going to be how tightly they're braided up or things like that, but you could sort of get a feel for how squishy, how stiff the fiber is, right? This is I would qualify as medium, right? Because it's not going right at your fingers.
Super fine merino and
right?
baby camel.
This
has a good portion of Rambouillet in it.
A good way to distinguish it,
Corriedale,
right, is where you put your hands, right? Because if I put it up here, obviously it's going to be stiff, but if I bring my hand down a little bit, it's going to move down some, as opposed to, let's grab one of the really drapey ones, right?
Yeah.
So like, no matter where I put my hand here,
this has a high amount of silk and alpaca.
So, and you can, once you play around with them, I'm sure if you go to stash diving, you'll be able to see for yourself how. Yeah.
This is Falkland, which is a pretty squishy medium wool.
It's fluffy, but
fluffy.
Won't drape.
Won't drape.
Right. So you go stash diving. Try some of your braids. See how they play differently. And also remember, this doesn't apply if this is your first spinning project. But if you've done spinning project before, try to think about how did the braid feel before you spun it, and look at some of your old projects. Right.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a quick thing to do. Depending on the way that you're going to put together your mashup. If you're going to spin directly from the comb top, if you're not going to do any further blending, the characteristics you really want to look for is you want to match a couple different characteristics. One is you want to match staple length.
You're talking about if you're taking two different singles that you're going to put together, or are you talking about the final...
Two different fibers. So if you're like, okay, I've got some Shetland, I've got some Corriedale, I've got some Wensleydale, I've got some Merino. Should I combine those?
Right. But you're talking about not blending.
Not blending.
You're talking
spinning
about...
just from chunks of comb top.
And spinning them onto the same single, or spinning them onto opposite singles?
Onto the same single.
Okay.
And also opposite singles. So
okay,
for
a
mashup project, you should be trying to match some basic fiber characteristics for everything that you're putting into the mashup.
There you go.
So you need to look at staple length, because staple length is important because that helps determine how much twist you're going to put in. And I learned the hard way. One of my first mashups had a variety of different fiber types. And what it meant is I'd sometimes run into like a portion of Wensleydale, and suddenly my singles turn to rope, because Wensleydale doesn't need as much twist as something that's a shorter staple. And so like my spinning's all over the place from that mashup spin, because they're different staple lengths.
So I'm going to pause you there. Obviously, you're not going to get exactly the same staple length from every fiber, right? So what is something that is a good, the delta that you can deal with, right? Obviously, you don't want to mix cotton with wool, right? Because that's the two opposite ends. But how far along that range can you go?
Generally, you can sort your wools and most of your animal fibers into three broad characteristics. You have short stapled fibers. That's your like super fine merino, cashmere, bison, vicuña, yak, the luxuries, that kind of stuff. Then you start getting into medium wools, which kind of are in the range of next to skin soft for most people. And that's things like Polwarth, Rambouillet, Targhee, Corriedale, Shetland, kind of those ones. And then after that you start getting to long wools. So things like BFL, Wensleydale, Teeswater, some of those.
Okay, I'm trying to grab some of the ones that I can actually spell. Give me a short animal length.
Short?
Yeah.
Yak.
Yak, perfect. That's right. I should have known that. All right, so I made a little chart because I like diagrams, right? So you've got like cotton on the short end, right? And long animal wools like BFL on the long end. Now, how far do I want, do I have to stay within the same category, or can I go one category over? What's your thought there?
I would generally stay in the same category.
All right, so hard lines between the categories. Now I really want to do cotton yak just to see what it's like.
You can do cotton yak. Well, are actually... You're the one who put cotton over there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We're just talking about animal fibers right now.
All right, never mind.
I'm actually blending up some CVM and cotton on my drum carder today.
So now just to spite
I'll give you the chance
I want
to
do
spin wool and cotton together.
Yak Shetland.
Not the best choice. When you're spinning, the yak needs a different amount of twist than the Shetland.
Okay. Yeah. So you've got your three main categories, and I made four because I was not right. But stick in your category.
Yeah, stick in your category.
Which is weird for a mashup concept, but...
Yeah. If you really want to be picky, stick to crimp 2. But generally, if you're sticking in your category for staple length, you're going to be staying for crimp 2.
Okay, what?
Crimp is how ziggy-zaggy the fiber is.
So try to match crimp as well.
Yeah. So...
See, I was confused because you were kept on saying crimp 2, and I'm like, crimp 2, Revenge of the Crimp, or something.
But like when I'm doing hand-dyed comb top, I'll do like, for sweaters, I usually pick Falkland, Targhee, Rambouillet, Polwarth, and all of those will spin perfectly well together. And, I'm not really changing up my spinning between the different fiber types. So
somebody says I need a whiteboard, and I would totally run around and get a whiteboard. If not one, it's kind of a pain to get back up. But two, look, we've got behind us some space taken up by the bats that haven't sold yet.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Okay. There's a plug there.
Okay, so we talked about staple length, a little bit about crimp. The other important thing is add-ons. So things that are not your primary fiber are also going to change things. And these are, I like to think of this as slippy or non-slippy. Okay? For those who aren't in Pittsburgh, slippy equals slippery. But there's extra syllables in there. So slippy. Okay? Slippy fibers are things like alpaca, silk, viscose. Help me think of other slippy things. Bamboo, rose, those are all viscoses.
Oyster. No, it's
No,
pearl.
pearl.
Sorry.
Pearl.
Even though it's actually oyster. Sorry. Go on.
Those are slippy fibers. They're going to change how you draft and how you spin. And they affect the characteristics of your final yarn. So if you really want a consistent yarn, you want to keep the percentage of slippy fibers pretty consistent between all the fiber choices that you're putting together. This doesn't mean that the percentages have to be 100% on. It doesn't mean you can only have 20% slippy fibers or 25% slippy fibers or 15% slippy fibers. You shouldn't make a big jump between like 25% slippy fibers and 50. That's not the greatest idea. But generally, if you're looking at 25% or less slippy fibers, it'll all work out. But just realize that if you have fiber that has a slippy fiber added to it, it is going to spin different than just that wool or animal fiber by itself.
Is this okay?
Yeah. And
what about non-slippy add-ons?
Like what?
Well, you said that there's slippy add-ons. I would assume that there's non-slippy add-ons as well.
Okay. There are some add-ons that I don't really consider as being slippy.
Like nylon?
Nylon's not really slippy. Tussa silk, I don't think is really slippy. Sari silk isn't slippy, it's texture. Flax isn't slippy.
Sparkly stuff.
Sparkle doesn't usually affect...
Which is weird, because you'd imagine sparkle to act kind of like silk, because they're both shiny, but the sparkly... it's not just nylon. What are the other shiny things? The
Angelina, Stellina.
There you go, yeah. All those, so they're not slippy.
They're not really slippy.
It doesn't matter?
Yeah.
The levels? Okay.
What really matters is the fibers that are getting added into a blend that change how you would spin that fiber if it was just 100% itself. So, however, you can, if you're throwing together a sweater and you're putting together like 6 different braids and most of them are Polworth and you want to do one that's 85% Polworth, 15% silk, it's going to be okay. Okay, these are not hard and fast rules. They are guidelines.
Also, I mean, it does also depend on your level of spinning skill. It depends on how well they're blended, right? If you end up with chunks of silk versus something that's more evenly blended that doesn't have these chunks.
If you can spin everything the same wraps per inch, no matter what's being thrown at you, the world is your oyster.
Now I really want to, throw oysters at you while you're spinning.
Please don't.
So you can see. Never mind.
It's a good thing we're in lockdown. You can't go out and get oysters.
That's true. I do have a fish tank. What if I can grow them? Sorry, go on.
Are you done?
I'm done. I'm quite done.
So.
For now.
Okay. So those are my general guidelines. Okay?
All right, review.
Match the staple length. Match the amount of twist you're going to need. That's that one. Okay? You're trying to make this easy for yourself by that every fiber you're going to spin it basically the same way. So 2, try to keep the amount of slippy fiber about the same in all of your choices. Okay? Now, if you have a stash of a reasonable size, it should not be that hard to come up with however much you need for a certain project, unless you're going for like queen size blanket, by just pulling out what, okay, here's all my medium wools, or here's all my soft slippy stuff. That shouldn't be that hard of a challenge. If that is a tough challenge, seriously enhance your stash. Okay? Or go buy, support some, fiber businesses.
So there's two base rules, what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
2 base rules.
Here we go.
Okay? Pretty simple, right?
I need to get better handwriting along with that whiteboard. That's what I need to do. Okay. So we got a question from Summerhill Spinner. Would you put different amounts of twist in as you get different staple lengths popping up?
No. I have tried this. It ends up biting you in the end because that also means that when you ply, you have to put a different amount of ply twist. And your yarn is going to want to equalize that twist over the course of the entire single. So what will happen is that you will have an area that is overspun, and then that's the fiber that does not need as much twist when it's next to something that needs less twist, and the less twist stuff will be you won't have the right amount of twist because twist travels. So even if you are changing your amount of twist when you're using a particular fiber, and we're going to talk about fiber prep for this, which is you're not going to be spinning probably more than 1/4 ounce of a fiber at a time. You're going to be switching fibers every 1/4 ounce or so. You're not going to be able to control it well enough.
Made a diagram.
Yes.
So basically, you can put this on the bobbin for your single, but then the moment you start plying everything together, it's going to go like that. It's going to even out. So what was properly spun here and here, you're going to get over twisted here and under twisted here.
Yeah. Okay.
I like this idea of a whiteboard. We got to do this next time.
So I'm going to look at my particular project. So I went into my stash and pulled a bunch of medium wools because this is something I like to stash up because it's something I like to spin. So this is mostly Falkland. There's some Rambouillet in here. There might be some Polworth. There's some Falkland alpaca blend. And basically, I was like, okay, we'll go pinks and purples, and I want a little bit of an orange, and we'll talk about color next time. Okay? So, not all of this is the same fiber type. Some of this I don't even know what the fiber is. They're grab bags, but I can kind of tell by what it looks like that it's all medium wools.
And you can tell that because of
staple length,
pulling off a little bit of
the
staple,
softness, yeah.
the drape, all of that stuff.
So some of this is Polworth and Mulberry Silk.
And I think
this is Falkland and Baby Alpaca. So there is a little bit of drape.
I think that's a key factor to tell people, right? We just spent the past 20 minutes talking about how, match this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And you've got grab bag things that you have no clue what they actually are. And it's going to be okay because
your window's pretty big for this.
They are similar, right? They're
right.
similar enough, and you can tell from feeling it, from squishing it, from pulling on it. It doesn't have to be, let's pull out a staple and put it on the ruler and get within X percentage. No. This is meant to be, fun art, and you have your experience as a spinner to even out a lot of these things as well.
And there are other things you are going to do that we are going to talk about that will help you spin consistently, even if you aren't spinning the exact same fiber for the entire project.
Go on.
So, what if you have a bunch of fiber and it's not all going to spin the same? Can we still do a mashup? Do you think?
Oh, I'm going to guess this is where you talk about blending.
Yeah. So, and we're going to talk about fiber prep. But just in case you're like, okay, I'm going to go grab some fiber. I'm going to make a sweater. depending on your size, a sweater is going to take probably 1 pound to 2 pounds of fiber. And you're just like, I just don't have that 1.5 pounds of fiber I need. What do I do? The answer, if you've got a whole bunch of stuff and you like the colors, but the fibers aren't going to play well, you card. So the answer to, in the end, if you can't pick consistent fiber characteristics, pull out the blending board, the hand cards, the drum carder, and make yourself some bats. Because a carded fiber preparation doesn't care about everything being exactly the same.
And how much blending is necessary to make it not care? Because I'm sure we've all run into that situation where you get a chunk of silk while you're spinning, and that ends up messing things up.
If you want to be really consistent, you should probably do at least 2 rounds of blending. 1 round is probably, you're still going to have lumps of any particular thing. And if they are drastically different, you are going to tell. And I just went through this because I just did a mashup last summer that I spun up. And it was a whole bunch of different fiber types, a whole bunch of different staple lengths, different amounts of Slippy fibers. And I had some bats that I only carded once, and I had some bats I carded twice. I wish I had carded all the bats twice, because the bats that were only carded once, there's a lot more non-uniformity of fiber.
So, you mentioned all the tools for blending.
Yeah.
We're in quarantine. What if I don't have that?
I'll come up with a way for that. I have a secret I learned from Esther Rogers of how to make your own bats with absolutely no fiber prep tools.
Is that another video?
Yeah, it'll be another YouTube live session.
All right.
I've got like a whole plan.
Nice.
So, if you want to see the whole plan, go to the Hipstrings, www.hipstrings.com, and I should add a link to the front page, but I haven't done that yet. Look for Great Mashup. Mashup is one word. SAL. And that there's a product listing where you can buy mystery bags of different flavors from me, but it also just gives you the outline of all the YouTube live streams and what we'll be covering each day. It's not a uniform, every 2 days there's going to be a live stream. It's a schedule that's based on how much time I actually expect for you to be able to take to pull out your fiber, make decisions, and then when we start getting into the whole spinning bit, we're going to have a little bit longer time between sessions, so you have a chance to actually do the spinning.
That's right.
Yes.
I should have
if you
asked
can
before
read
I showed it.
Nick's writing.
You know what I know what I'm gonna do next time. I've got ideas. All right.
So that's the first part of fiber selection for a mashup spin. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, so let's do one more review while people are writing
review.
up questions. We've got. Oh wait, I can go back. Match staple length.
Match your amount of Slippy.
Yep. Less than 25% is easy. If you've got more than 25%, you definitely want to work on matching that. If you don't have enough of matching stuff for the size of project you want to do, you want to do some blending. And in terms of how much you might want to consider, you've got 1 to 2 pounds of fiber for a sweater. Do you have any guidance for other projects, like a hat or a scarf?
Well, a hat is usually only you need less than 100 grams.
Okay.
So
not really good for mashup.
Unless you have like a bunch of fiber samples and you want to.
That's fun.
Yeah.
If you've got your collection of Hipstrings fiber samples and you don't know what to do with those little bits, then yeah.
You can do a mashup of fiber samples, because those are usually about 1/4 of an ounce.
I like that.
So if you got 16 of those, you've got yourself a hat.
Okay, we've got a question now from John Hall. Can you spin cotton with short staple, medium long wool?
You are only going to want to spin cotton with a short stapled wool. Anything else, when you really start to drastically change the staple lengths, you're not going to get when you are in your drafting zone, you're only going to pull fibers that are a particular length. And so what you'll end up doing is spinning some wool and then spinning some cotton and then spinning some wool, depending on what you grab on.
So your wool is either going to be way over twisted or your cotton's not going to have enough twist.
Right.
And if you do some blending prior to that,
you can help, but it's still, you're going to have the tendency to only spin one at a time. That's especially with combed.
Well, and
you can if you're having that problem with spinning from comb top and spinning kind of a worsted spin, you can make it better by spinning from the fold. That's something that often gets recommended for luxury blends. Stuff like yak silk, a lot of people recommend spinning from the fold, and that's mostly because the yak and the silk aren't the same staple length. And so by kind of folding them in half, you can catch them both in the middle of their staple and they kind of will play along-ish.
So would that allow you to go from medium wool with cotton when normally you would go short staple with cotton?
I still want to do it. I've spun some cotton wool blends. And actually the best one I've had the luck with was blending cotton with a merino fleece that had tender tips. And so once I removed the tender tips, it was a very short stapled fleece, like we're talking 1.5 to 2. Mm-hmm. And that spun beautifully together.
Yeah. I would expect
generally in blends, the closer your staple lengths are, the easier time you'll have spinning.
I would expect you'd get something like, I've been spinning some alpaca that has some shortcuts in it.
Yeah.
So I would expect you get very much the same sort of thing.
Exactly.
Where the long staple ends up being your main carrying of the yarn, but the short staples just sort of stick out and they end up getting pulled out. And as the yarn ages and as you use it, you're going to get pilling, you're going to get stuff falling out. All right. Enough on that question. Yes. We've got some more. Angela Graves, what if my fiber amounts are smaller than 2 ounce or 4 ounce braids? I subbed to the spinning box for a long time and have a ton of 1 ounce samples. Can this be done still?
Oh, definitely. That's awesome. I can, this is, probably 1/2 ounce here. There might be a 1/4 ounce of this stuff. There's 4 ounces of this.
Yeah, so this is kind of the point of this project, right? So you take all of these little things that you have and you're going to be spinning them, going from one of these 4 ounces, or single ounce, and then going to another single ounce, and that transition as they go on top of each other, or when you're applying them together once you go from one to the next, right?
Yeah, so the way that I do my mashups, you're only going to be spinning a little bit of any fiber at a time, and it's going to be random, kind of what you pick next. So you can definitely, you're going to be breaking everything down into about the same unit, and you can mix up. So you can definitely mix up, you have 4 ounces of this, 3 ounces of this, 8 ounces of this other thing, 1 ounce of this. I have, a 1/4 ounce of something else. You can throw those all together into the same spin. There's no need, there was another, people talk about combo spins, and that was, you have to have this many 4 ounce braids to then divide. No, you don't need that for this. I'll be like, okay, I've put together where I'm like, okay, I want to use this colors from this hand-dyed top, but not that color. So I'll edit and take out colors that I don't want to use to get a pile of colors that I do want to use for a particular project.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of people with just braids that they get from people, they'll get something like this and they'll say, you know what, I really don't like this purple for this project, and I'll just rip off this section, only use this, and then keep this for something else, right?
Right.
So, we have a question from Summerhill Spinner. Could you cut your longer fiber to match the shorter ones?
You can.
Can you really?
You can. I just started playing with this stuff called Silk Lap. And it was the first time that I took scissors. because it's like this web of fiber, and it would be impossible to spin, or it'd be very hard to spin.
Well, that's for super long staple
That's
lengths.
super long.
Right.
Um,
If you're talking about going from like a medium and trying to bring it down to a short staple in order to match a cotton.
yeah. You could. The thing is with cutting, it's much better to pull apart staple lengths. And cutting is going to have a sharp thing that's probably going to poke out like a guard hair does.
Yeah. So
I don't recommend cutting your fiber.
I think I have a diagram. I want you to tell me if this is completely off base before I show it. But basically, you've got the problem that you're going to be cutting there, and so you end up with different
exactly.
lengths. Okay, good. So I actually know what I'm talking about a little bit. All right, so if you think of your fiber as something like this, right, each individual staple length, each of these lines is approximately about the same length, but when this is blended together, I don't know why the camera has showed us a pause. Oh, well, I hope everything's going okay. When everything is blended together, they're sort of lined up and put together in a line. So let's say I cut it right there, right? Okay, that might make it feel like I'm cutting this top part or something like that. But really, if I look at this bottom part, I'm actually ending up with multiple different lengths. So I'm going to have 2 super shorts and 2 mediums, right? So that's a problem.
Create neps.
Right? So you're going to get neps, you're going to get same sort of thing where you are going to have, because you've got such a drastic difference in length, you're not going to be able to match up. You're going to get this pilling. You're going to get all that stuff coming out. If that's all you have, then so be it, right?
Right.
So you can certainly experiment with it. We totally encourage the experimentation. That's kind of the point
Create
of all this stuff.
Create a little sample.
But
spin it. See if you like spinning it.
Yeah. Expect that you are going to get something weird coming out with these neps, and if you don't, then definitely tell us about it, because we want to know the process that you use. Good?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Also, has anything weird happened with the video? Because according to our camcorder, there's a big exclamation point right about here. But hopefully it's still streaming fine. Everything's quiet. I don't know if we're still alive. Somebody say something. Anything? All right. In the meantime, while we're waiting for okay, good. There's another question. Yes, one from John Hall. One other question, if there's time. Of course, there's time. Can you ply cotton with wool, say for a 3-ply with 2 cotton and 1 wool? By the way, your sweater looks great. What are
You're
the
going to have some weird effects with plying plying singles that have different characteristics, because the 2 plies will react differently when you finish them. So wool fluffs and cotton gets shorter. Cotton gets shorter by about 20%. So unless you know you're going to have exactly the same shrinkage in both of your singles, it's going to give an extra texture to your finished yarn. It's the same as if you had like wool and alpaca. If you did 2 different singles, one that's wool, one that's alpaca, when you finish it, those 2 singles are going to act differently in the yarn.
So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something you need to be aware of as you're doing. I don't think anybody does it on purpose today. Again, I'm going more from the concept of experimentation. But I'm gonna go a little science nerd here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong on this. But so Jill was saying that you've got 2 different singles. They're going to shrink differently after you wash them, right? So if I have, let's make it real simple. My single, they are spun. They are the same length, single A, single B. When I wash it, I'm going to get different levels of shrinkage, right? So
one single is going to end up, when it's plied, it's going to be loose around the other.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to go for, right? So in your daily life, well, everything's digital now, so it may not have happened, but as we were all younger, temperature sensors, thermostats work this way exactly, because the top part and the bottom part of two different metals, if they shrink at different rates, they actually join together. So they don't stay like that. They actually curl up, right? So because of that change in temperature, now we're not talking about temperature now. I don't want to confuse everybody, but because you're going to have two different things moving in different ways, you're going to get a different effect. I could imagine that you get something that's really, I don't want to say pigtaily, but something where you've got
almost pig. It's almost like a boucle. It's textured.
Yeah. So.
Or like a spiroplied yarn.
It's not impossible. It might come out with something pretty cool. I'm very interested to see that. But know that it's not going to lay out as you spin it. Once you wash it, it's going to turn into something completely different. Which, I mean, there's a lot of projects that do exactly that. I mean, the whole point of a felt bag is to do exactly that thing. You knit something this big, and then it's going to shrink down to that, right? So, definitely, it will be interesting.
But it's not what we're going for here. Here we're going for a consistent yarn.
Okay.
That is going to have the same amount of twist and behave the same because you're doing a large project with it.
Yeah. I just hate to say, no, you can't do that.
You can. It's not the point here. Yeah. I'm guessing you came in a little bit later. The sweater is a mashup that not me spun and knit, but it is my fiber. It is Space 2-ply Space Unicorn, 1-ply turquoise, which not the same fiber content, but...
Do we have Space Unicorn here? In turquoise?
Yes, I do. I did pull them on purpose.
Yeah. There you go. I'll hold them up while you talk.
No.
Oh, yeah, you're doing your thing. Yeah.
So you can see, like, this is BFL and silk and merino wool. This is merino and alpaca and viscose and silk. Yeah. They kind of behave the same, so they spin up about the same.
So, I mean, this one's definitely a little bit more drapey than this one, right? So the turquoise is a little bit more...
It's not different enough to cause problems.
But it's not like, a stiff one and a drapey one, right? You've got a little bit of drape. And this has worn fantastically. It doesn't stretch, but it has a nice drape on it.
Yeah, it has a little bit of drape. It doesn't like sag to my knees by the end of the day, though. But that is part of yarn structure. That's another topic I'll be addressing. See how this all works together?
You've got a plan. I like it. All right. Any other questions?
This is like my favorite thing ever, is to geek out about fibers. So lay it on me.
So I will. While we're in a dead time, I will point out my selection of mug, because I know that these sorts of things can be daunting. But actually, you can.
Seriously, play with your stash.
I mean, otherwise, all it's doing there is providing insulation, and we're getting into the summer now, so...
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, okay, it can keep the cold in, but... Yeah, I'd much rather you spin on it.
Yeah.
And if you all haven't heard my shtick about the insulation, that is how I help people justify to some significant others that may not be quite so supportive of their stash. Look, you're providing added insulation to your house so long as you store that on the outer wall of your domicile, right? So if you've got these nice big boxes, I mean, it's like double, triple the insulation you currently have, right? Can't hurt.
Okay. Do you have like a dad joke to finish since that's your thing?
Oh, God. There was...
You guys have the time it takes for Nick to come up with a dad joke.
There was a really good one that we talked about the other day. Oh, I can't remember. I'll go with it's sad to say that this is an oldie but a goodie now. It's like a couple of months old. What goes really good with coronavirus? Lyme disease. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. See you Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Same place. and we'll be talking about color theory.
And if you have any other questions and you didn't catch this live, please put it on the YouTube channel. In the comments section, we will answer that as well.
You can also find us as Hipstrings on Instagram and Ravelry and Facebook.
And I'm Mr. Hipstrings on Instagram because that's the only social media I do.
So have a great night and go stash diving. Pick out some fiber that you want to play with.
Good night.